It was to the moment, 50 years ago, at the early morning hours of June 5th, 1967, that 179 Israeli fighter jets dived into the airports, the military airports of Egypt, thereby deciding basically the 6 days war. 2 days later, the infantry warriors of the IDF army marched into the old city of Jerusalem. And the question that keeps being above us ever seen is, was it our finest moment or our darkest curse? Was the swift victory of June 1967 the single most heroic salvation of the Zionist enterprise, or was it the beginning of the end of Zionism as we knew it? Catch 67, that's the name of it's really a name of a very important and impressive book published recently by Micha Goodman, whose key argument is basically this. He says the war of 1967 has locked Israeli right and left in rigid, obviously opposite ideologies, to the point where no real dialogue is possible anymore. The left claims that continuing the occupation will lead to a catastrophe in terms of an apartheid, and the right claims that ending the occupation or withdrawing from the territories will lead to a catastrophe in security terms. And I want to ask you first, Barak, given the dichotomy that we all know, in your 10-year career as senior diplomatic correspondent for Haaretz, was there, in your view, a point in time, or have you witnessed a point in time which manifested how crucial this question became for us? How divided we are around it?
Well, I'll tell you this, and I'll start before, I'll take it few years back to where I saw it first. When I served in the IDF, I dealt for 6 years with the Israeli-Palestinian issue. And in one of my assignments in Gaza, it was before the disengagement, for the pull-out from Gaza, and it was the first time I was in Gaza in my life, during my military service, and you see those things in your own eyes, and you understand, and you're like, 20 years old, 21 years old, and you understand that something, okay, there's a problem here, okay? You go to Gaza, and in the Gaza Strip, there used to be a very small settlement near the city of Rafah. Okay, the city of Rafah is, 200,000 Palestinians, among them something like 90,000, maybe 100,000 refugees in refugee camps. And then there was a small settlement it was called Rafiach Yam. It was right on the corner. And you just see that this is just, it's from just complete craziness, or it is just impossible. And then I came back again to Gaza and to the West Bank as a journalist. It was 3 or 4 years later. And it didn't seem more reasonable. And 10 years later, it just seems more and more impossible to continue this. And I think that when you see things on the ground, you have to ask yourself the question, okay, where do you want to take this? Okay, you can take it to the left, or you can take it to the right. Okay, and both are legitimate.
And you have no recommendation as to where we should take it. I don't know if you noticed, but Barak is writing for Haaretz. He took a very specific angle on the question. Therefore, I want to turn to you, Amit. And Ehud Barak, the former prime minister, wrote a brilliant review on this book that I mentioned of Micha Goodman, challenging the symmetry. And Barak argues there is no symmetry between the argument from the right and the argument for the left. Barak just mentioned one side of the argument, and Ehud Barak says, no, there's a certain threat to the democracy of the Jewish state if we stay in the territories, whereas on the other side, the argument from the left or from the right saying that we have to withdraw, I can deal with the security problems. I know how to deal with security problems. How do you tackle that argument? Is there a symmetry, as we say in Hebrew, Ele ve'ele divrei Elohim chaim, both are legitimate arguments, or is there right or wrong here?
Okay. There is an old Chinese proverb, which I just made up this morning, saying that two things are the hardest to translate, poetry and politics. So we leave poetry alone, but when it comes to politics, I guess you all know that it's quite impossible to explain to Israelis what the whole thing with the Obamacare is. You can explain to me for hours and I will never understand that.
Yeah,
And
how come you guys don't want medical insurance?
exactly.
Or
And
part of it, not you.
and
We wish to die.
exactly.
I mean, or that other people die.
Exactly.
Better yet.
And at the same respect, I had a really hard time explaining to foreigners for many, many years, till November 8th, 2016 in the US and June 5th, 2016 in the UK, what the heck Israeli politics is all about. And the most difficult thing for American citizens or European ones to understand regarding Israeli politics was the fact that it wasn't about the economy, stupid. It wasn't the economy. In Israel, blue-collar workers vote for the white-collar parties, and white-collar workers vote for the blue-collar parties.
Because we all
It makes
vote,
sense, right?
Because we all vote from our fears. Either the fear of becoming an apartheid country or the fear of not existing at all.
Because, as the late singer-songwriter Meir wrote, at the end of every sentence, one says in Hebrew, sits an old Arab man with a hookah. He tried to say it in a brilliant way that the Israeli existence, at the end of the day, deals with it wasn't even the Israeli-Palestinian question, but the Muslim-Jewish question. And that was the reason why Israeli politics, the watershed, was whether you support or oppose the two-state solution. But something really strange happened. The right wing supports, officially at least, Prime Minister Netanyahu supports the two-state solution, whereas the leader of the opposition says that the two-state solution is impossible for the decades to come. So what the hell are we fighting about? And I think that at the end of the day, and you can understand since the fall of 2016, it's about the identity. We vote from our gut rather than from our head, from our brain. Politics is not necessarily a rational thing. I don't try to say that politics is irrational, but that identity plays a dramatic role. And two Jewish arguments actually fight each other. The argument of security, the Holocaust ingredient, the fact that if we give up the territories in the West Bank, in Judah and Samaria, we will not be able to defend ourselves, and a second Holocaust will occur. This is the right-wing argument. And on the other hand lies the argument of ceasing to be Jewish, that if we control or if we happen to have a non-Jewish majority in Israel, including the West Bank, we will no longer be able to keep our Jewish values.
But both you say are Jewish arguments, only another take on Judaism. Yeah. Which brings me to you, Sivan, because you're, in a way, certainly in the environment of Israeli journalism, you embody a kind of bridge. You are Balat Tshuva. You became an Orthodox person when you were very young, but on your own. You are a journalist, an anchor, or a senior anchor person in Channel 2 News, and you kind of juggle between the worlds. Can you tell me, is it true that the dichotomy tears Israeli apart, or when you talk to people, eventually, they all want the same thing?
Yeah, and you know what, first of all, before I'm like a bridge, thank you, my mother taught me to always say toda. So I just want to start and say toda to all of you. It's extremely exciting to be here, to see 3,000 friends, I think. I feel like we're friends. And to be here in such a really impressive committee, convention. It's like, I've never heard, maybe it's my... it's my problem. I never heard of the AJC before I came here, and now I'm impressed, and it's good to be here. But you know what? That's part of the answer, because if we look at ourselves and see the bigger picture for a minute, maybe we'll see the situation and with more proportions. I mean, we started with the problems. Let's have zoom out a little bit, okay? 75 years ago, my family, okay, was in gas chambers in the land of Poland and Germany, okay, my grandmother's brothers. In 48, okay, the left and the right in Israel, they didn't sit in nice panels in Hilton, D.C. They were in Altalena. Have you heard of the ship Altalena that was sinking near Tel Aviv? Because there was no disputes and nice arguments. It was like Ben-Gurion sent people, you know, to kill warriors of the Etzel and the Haganah. And 50 years ago, Israel was almost destroyed. There were great chances that they will succeed. And 25 years ago, when I was a teenager, buses exploded everywhere in Israel, everywhere, every 2 days. It was like in the Oslo Agreement days. So I think we can talk about the problems. There are many problems, but let's see, you know, what works. Usually in the media, there's a famous phrase, but I didn't invent it up, but I didn't make it up in my mind. There's a famous sentence that in the news we say, good evening, but then we prove for an hour why it's not good. Okay?
That's
Good
why
evening.
somebody used to end the news, good night and good luck, perhaps tomorrow will be a better day.
So we can discuss the problem. You're right, there are problems, but let's see it I think, in a balanced way before we discuss them. Yeah, you're right, we talk a lot about what happened at 67, maybe something freezed there, and it's wrong. I mean, there are many other issues, things that we must also deal with. Yeah, you're right.
You know, if we need a proof for the division within Israelis, and you're right, sometimes we see them sharper and sometimes less, but I think we can find the proof in two very powerful texts published just recently. One by David Grossman, an interview on Yediot Achronot the other day, in which David Grossman is offering, the great Israeli writer and author, he's offering a harsh indictment against Israeli leadership that steers fears and enables settlements, thereby rendering a future solution almost impossible. And then he says this, I don't want to live anywhere else. This place is dear to me. The story of the Jewish people and its land is one of the most amazing stories in human history, how a people of displaced refugees became that miracle called the State of Israel, including incredible creations of ours in culture, high-tech industry, science, even security. But Israel was founded to become a home, a place that will feel like home to us, and that includes the promise of a future for us and for our children. But that cannot happen if the walls of the house keep moving all the time. There are 480,000 settlers in the territories today, says Grossman. They created a reality in which it will be difficult to draw the borders. In that respect, they present a danger to the future of Israel. And you know, Amit, I took this text of Grossman last night and I read it against another text. Another powerful text,
whose
published
writer
recently,
I personally know.
Written by one of the most thoughtful journalists in Israel. His name is Segal, happens to be Amit's father. And Chagai is also the editor-in-chief of Makor Rishon, a weekly aimed mostly at the settlers community, with a right-wing agenda. But listen what he did. Chagai dived into the archives and reminded us that we were so exhilarated and emotionally taken by the victory in 1967 that it embraced both right and left. Writers, generals, politicians, intellectuals were all crying at the Kotel and celebrating the victory of Israeli might, buying military albums, collecting stamps, singing the songs of the war, even people who months later became ardent opposition to the occupation. And the question, I want to direct it to you, Barak. If Chagai is right, and Chagai is documented, I mean, the text is well documented, perhaps we, or some of us on the Israeli left, have been rewriting history. Have we forgotten that it was really the most amazing salvation of the Jewish state?
I don't think so. You know, my parents, my family is from a small city called Kfar Saba. It's like 20 minutes northern of Tel Aviv. In 1967, thank you. In 1967, Kfar Saba was 200 meters from the border, okay, from the city of Qalqilia. The Jordanians had an artillery batteries, and they bombed Kfar Saba, okay, and for a few times before 1967 and during the war.
It's the last interesting thing that happened in Kfar Saba.
No. The last interesting thing that happened in Kfar Saba was that my team, my soccer team, won the championship, but it was 30 years ago. And you know, so the day after the war, this threat was taken out, okay? And you know, it changed the lives of thousands of people. And Kfar Saba is just one example. You know, it happened all over the country. But you know, it's been 50 years ago. Israel of 2017 is not the Israel of 1967. In case no one noticed, Israel of 2017 is a regional superpower. It has the most powerful army in the region and one of the most powerful armies in the world. Okay, Israel has more firepower than all of its neighbors combined.
But it's still surrounded by enemies, and it's still a villa in the jungle, and still many people will tell you the last thing Israel has to do right now is to become ever weaker.
I'm getting there, okay? And last I heard, some people say that Israel can annihilate every living organism in the radius of 1,500 kilometers in the press of a button, okay? And what's around us? I'll tell you what's around us. When I was in the IDF, the main threat everyone were talking about for years, okay, since 1967, by the way, since 1973, was the Syrian army. Okay, the Syrian army is gone. For years, everyone were talking about the Iraqi army, that they will send divisions of tanks through Jordan and you know, to fight Israel. This is gone. Okay, the Jordanian border, which is Israel's longest border, is the quietest border. Do you know how many soldiers Israel has on the border from the Sea of Galilee to Eilat? You know, it's a military secret, so I won't tell it here, but it's not much. Okay? It's not much, believe me, because you know who's protecting that border? Not the IDF, the Jordanian army. Okay?
So you're saying there is no existential threat?
I'm not saying that there are no threats. Okay? We're not living in Canada. Okay?
Kfar Saba is more interesting than Canada.
No, I wouldn't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But you know, we have to realize that it is not 1967. It's not 1947. It is not 1917. It's 2017. Israel is an economic superpower. It's a diplomatic superpower. It's a military superpower. You know, we can allow ourselves, okay, to, for a second, just for a second, put aside, okay, the Holocaust, okay, for a second, okay? For a second, put aside all the wars that we've been through. For a second, put aside everything that happened in the last 70 years, and ask ourselves, okay, but how do we make the situation, because many people say, oh, you say the situation is terrible, but it's great. No, I'm not saying the situation is terrible. I'm saying the situation is great, but it can be 10 times greater. Okay, so how do we take this situation where we are the strongest country in the region, okay, economically, militarily, diplomatically, and use it for our own interest?
I'm going to stop you there. Brace yourself, Amit. I was asked to remind you to fill your cards with questions. If anybody wants to ask a question, we'll get to the audience in several minutes. Amit, if Barak is right, how come most Israelis just don't sign on to it?
So here's a brief 60-second
flash from reality
ride for Israel's public opinion through the years. Till 1987, the vast majority, the Israeli consensus opposed the two-state solution. For 20 years, following the Six-Day War, the vast majority of Israelis thought it would be possible to hold territories at no cost, give or take. In 1987, the first Intifada broke out, and gradually, but consistently, most of Israelis supported a negotiated deal, an ultimate deal to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And then in 1993, the Oslo Accords were signed, but in the year 2000, the then Prime Minister Ehud Barak offered the Palestinian chairman Yasser Arafat literally everything, including the Temple Mount or the effective control over the Temple Mount. And Arafat said no, and the second Intifada broke out. And then the vast majority of Israel ceased to believe in a negotiated agreement. But then a new idea came up, a unilateral disengagement. That's what Barak described in Gaza. Barak talked about the tiny settlement of Rafiah Yam. You know, I think Barak forgot to mention that Rafiah Yam no longer exists. It was evacuated unilaterally. Israel evacuated 10,000 settlers.
So you're saying that most Israelis, ever since the collapse of the Oslo Accord, the ascent of Hamas in
First,
Gaza,
in 2000,
the eruption of the Second Intifada, ceased to believe that it's possible, even if they want it.
Exactly. In 2000, they ceased to believe in the two-sided solution, and in 2006, following the Second Lebanon War, and in 2009, following another military operation in Gaza, which we evacuated and in return got rockets, they ceased to believe in the unilateral solution. So an awkward situation happens. The vast majority of Israelis support sort of a two-state solution, but at the very same time, they don't believe it's feasible. But this is one level. This is the security level. I suspect that there is a deeper level of argument in which the left mentions the moral factor of occupation, and the right wing actually possess the idea of the Jewish existence in our lands, in our fatherland.
So you say it runs to the moral level.
Exactly.
But I want to ask you one question, one follow-up question, a quick one, Amit. Suppose there was a moment of grace.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a moment of grace from your point of view, but suppose there was a moment of grace in which great leadership rises in both sides. There's a leader which rises up to the occasion on our side, and a leader who rises up to the occasion on their side.
Just happened in the US, great leadership.
I thought that you are saying we have such leaders nowadays. But suppose there is a moment of grace, and they come up with the end solution that everybody knows will be more or less the end game. Dismantling most of the settlements, some kind of solution in Jerusalem, no right of return, some solution to the water problem. There is no water problem anymore. The end game, we all know, will arrive someday. I will tell you 75% of Israelis will sign on to it.
And at the very same time, 75% of the Israelis don't believe it will ever happen.
Because the 25% convince them. The 25% that are in the minority that wouldn't sign on convince them that will never happen. The same happens on the Palestinian side. 65% of the Palestinians will sign on to the two-state solution.
Will sign the solution in which the Temple Mount will be in Israeli hands.
So you say that our maximum doesn't reach their minimum. That's
I didn't say that. Ahmed Tibi, the Palestinian Israeli Knesset member, says that he was the former advisor for Yasser Arafat, says that the maximum, the most generous Israeli is willing to give does not meet the minimum the most moderate Palestinian is willing to take.
So therefore you say it's not realistic.
But just one last thing. When we talk about the ultimate deal, I think at the end of the road, the color of the Israeli right wing is orange. Okay, it used to be orange. That was the color of the anti-disengagement plan
2005.
In 2005. Israelis these days are orange-colored, but it's not the orange of the right wing, of the ideological right wing. It's the orange of the death suits of ISIS. I don't think Israelis will be willing to make major concession as long as we see those horrifying phenomenon on our borders in Syria, in Egypt from time to time, in Sinai, and so forth. And as long as the situation
orange
like
is
that,
orange is the new black,
exactly.
or the new blue and white. Sivan, take it from there. The disengagement.
Yeah.
No, good. You know.
Yeah, you can ask a question, but I know what I want to say.
Yeah,
you can ask.
Arik Sharon, may his rest in peace. How would he say? This is not the question.
Exactly.
And then he'd go on and say anything.
Exactly. I had the privilege of hearing it from.
Go ahead.
I think a few months ago, I had the privilege of hosting another event. The Goldin family arranged it. I'm sure all of you heard of Hadar Goldin, the soldier. His body is still there in Gaza, and his family, his noble family, wants to bury him in Israel, and they're arranging a lot of ceremonies and events. And I was hosting it, and they asked me to interview Ariel Horovitz, a young, talented composer and singer. He's the son of Naomi Shemer, the famous composer, the writer of Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. And I asked him, why don't you write about politics? Naomi Shemer was, you can find her always writing about the right and about Eretz Israel, and she was in the extreme, I think, right wing, if you look at the map. And he told me, I think the right question in nowadays, we speak a lot, we spend a lot of energy speaking about the width, the breadth, the Rahav, okay, of Israel, Judah and Samaria and the settlements, and we speak about it all the time. And he told me, I think we should speak about the depth, okay, the omek, the values. Barak said we're a superpower, diplomatic superpower, okay, a financial superpower.
Military.
What you said? Another
military.
Yeah, military superpower, of course. Can we be a cultural superpower, a spiritual superpower? I mean, does Israel has a voice? Can we say something to the world? Okay, something about us,
that too.
about the identity.
We are that too.
I'm not thinking. I hope we will be there. I want to tell you, yesterday I spoke with a woman here, an Israeli woman. She lives here in Rockville, not far away. I was talking there with a group of Israelis. She's married to someone from here, from Washington, D.C., and they live there. And she told me she tries to expose the kids to Israeli culture. She wants them not to be, I don't want to insult you, but she wants them to be Americans, but with a Jewish, they must know what's going on in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, okay? So they see something, she lets them see things. And yesterday she found a song, the new song of a couple called Static and Ben El, two rappers from Israel. Oh, okay.
Sort of our Justin Biebers, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I see they
wish.
have fans. And she told me, okay, now I'm worried because they're going to quote, okay, this summer, again and again, the song they released yesterday. More than 1.5 million, I think, watched it already. In YouTube, yeah. So one minute before we got on the stage, I wrote the words of the song. It's a problem. I know a nuclear weapon of Iran, it's a problem, it's a threat. It's also a threat, a cultural threat, yeah, because kids are singing it. It's not a joke. It's not like, oh, it's culture. It's never mind what they watch on YouTube. It's important. So the words are, I'm sorry, okay, but יש שמועות שהיא סירבה פה, יש שמועות שאף אחת לא אמרה לו לא, יש מצב איתה אם רק תהיה ישיר. There are rumors that she refused to go with him, but there are rumors that no girl ever refused to go with him. So build the right situation. If you will just be straightforward, it will work.
I told you, poetry is the hardest to translate.
Well, I have a surprise for you. I have a surprise for you later, but if we stay here long enough, Sivan will sing it.
I think it's
but I want to make it difficult for you, Sivan, because it's easy for all of us to say this is nonsense, this is rubbish, this is not poetry, and we don't even bother to translate it. But when you say that Israel has to say something to the world, that we need our values to shine, mitzion tetzeh Torah udvar Hashem Yerushalayim.
Exactly.
Right, but Barak and other people I will tell you, what are our values? Values of oppression of another people, of occupation, of suppression, of deportation, of violence? What are our values? Will we be able to say, כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר השם בירושלים, if one day there is a majority, an Arab majority between the sea and the river, and they have no civil rights?
Okay, I see Amit wants to respond, but I think you can argue. The left, right, there is a discussion with the left and the right, but I still think you can say settlements are a problem, but don't say they are the problem, okay? That's, I think, a hypocrisy, because if you look at, I was here, thank you, but they can be a problem, but I want to explain why I don't think they're the problem, okay? I'm here in Washington for a few days, and I'm jet-lagged, okay, completely. So yesterday, I woke up at 5. And I was wondering why, what happened, okay? Leman Hashem, why am I here at 5 o'clock? So I opened CNN, and I saw live Theresa May speaking about the terror attack in Britain. So I said, hey, what's going on? It was in Manchester a week
And you
ago.
said, hey, there's
And
no
then-
occupation in Britain.
Yeah,
No settlements in Britain.
But again, we
No, but
see
Ilana,
that
you see, that's the thing. That's the thing.
terror is the problem.
A
okay?
short remark, Barak, and then I want
that's
to
the
turn
thing.
to somebody
That's
called
the
Donald
thing.
Trump.
When we discuss this issue of 1967 and 2017, and what do we do with the two-state solution, with the territories or with the Palestinian issue, that's the thing. Even if you say, even those that say that settlements are not the problem, even those that say that the land is not occupied, all those cannot and will not have an answer to the question of, okay, if the land is not occupied, the people, those 2.5 million Palestinians, they are occupied. What's your answer to them?
Let's let Amit have a short remark, and then I want to ask you a couple.
You know the
questions.
phrase, he who possesses a hammer sees all the problem as nails. We Israelis think, as in our Western thinking, that we have the solution at hand, and it isn't the case. I grew up in Ofra, a settlement. No clapping at all.
No.
Okay.
No, what?
And my parents bought me my first bikes in Ramallah. Okay? There were almost no block roads then. In 1993, I of course opposed it when I was 11, but Israelis supported in huge numbers the
Oslo Accords.
the Oslo Accords, which actually was supposed to lead to a Palestinian state. The only block from the Palestinians having a Palestinian state is the Palestinian refusal of accepting Israel as a Jewish state. And one last thing. In my opinion, Sivan spoke about the bigger picture. I'll tell you what the bigger picture is regarding Donald Trump's visit to Israel. We were sitting in the studios having the difficult mission of trying to analyzing Trump's words. Okay? And while sitting and trying to say that when Trump says two-state solution or not, it means something, it reminded me a story. One day, Barack Obama, the then president of the United States, wrote an article for Haaretz headline some 3 years ago. And a former minister called me that morning and said, you know what the difference between Barack Obama and me? And I told, no. And he said, the difference is that I read Barack Obama's article to Haaretz. Barack Obama didn't read it. So we try to analyze Donald Trump's words, and I'm not sure. But I'll tell you what that picture, what we will remember in 20 years or 100 years from Donald Trump's visit. That 2,000 years ago, the then superpower of the world destroyed the Temple Mount and the Western Wall. And 2,000 years later, the leader of the superpower, the world superpower, stands humble as he can at the very same spot. And this is what we will remember from Donald Trump's visit, in my opinion.
And that brings me. By the way, you didn't answer my question, but that's okay. That's
neither
the way panels go.
Neither mine.
Right, but that's okay. But I'll get to it later. We have time. I'll get to it later. But Barak, Amit mentioned Donald Trump. And he mentioned the photo of him in front of the Kotel, and right-wingers celebrated his speech in the Israeli Museum in Jerusalem, saying basically what Sivan was saying.
Ilana, why are you saying that right-wingers? You know, you're the second person that start to ask me this question in this.
Wait a minute. I have the flip side.
Why do you say right-wingers celebrated? I celebrated it.
But I have the flip side. But the left celebrated the decision not to move the embassy to Jerusalem. And not in the sense of being happy that it doesn't happen, but in the sense of saying, I told you so. He's like that or he's like that. What I'm asking you is, do you think there is a realistic chance of Trump, the businessman, the real estate billionaire, pulling a trick that no Obama could have pulled and getting to the subject with a business-like approach and saying, here's a piece of land, either you buy it or you divide it. That's how you deal with land.
Buy me, buy you.
Yeah.
So what's the question?
Do you think there's a realistic chance of him doing that?
Yes.
Will he invest real hardcore political capital in this neck of the woods?
I don't know what he's going to do. Okay, let's talk about what already happened, okay? Because I learned from few experiences, and Amit and I are joking about this from the election of 2015, that all the stuff that we said, because we're together on the radio, and only after the election we realized how much how much stuff we said before the election that had nothing to do with reality. So let's just look about what he did.
Okay.
All the stuff that happened since January 20th until today. And you know what? And then let's compare it to what Obama did.
And let's do all that in 30 seconds.
No problem. Trump came into office, appointed special envoy for the peace process. Obama did the same. Trump said in his first few days, I want to get a final status agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, the ultimate deal. Obama did the same. Netanyahu came to the White House for the first meeting. First thing Trump told him, I was there, it was amazing. First thing that they had a press conference before the meeting even. First thing that was that Trump said, please restrain the settlements, okay, hold back on settlements. Obama did the same. Trump didn't move the embassy. Obama neither. And Trump right now is talking about, relaunching peace talks to get a final status agreement. So this is all the things he already did. Okay?
I have
what is he going to do?
I have a 20-second alternative list, not alternative facts.
Alternative narrative.
Donald Trump yelled at the Palestinian president, stop funding terrorists. Obama didn't. Donald Trump said, or his administration repeatedly said that the settlements are not impediment for peace. Obama, of course, didn't. Donald Trump said he will never oppose Israel in the UN Assembly or institutions. Obama didn't. Donald Trump didn't mention the two-state solution. Obama did. And Donald Trump visited Israel in his first visit. Obama skipped the connection flight from Cairo back home.
No, but let's go back to your question.
But it's all the same.
The question wasn't if Amit misunderstood, my point wasn't to show that Obama and Trump are the same. My point was to show you what Trump already did.
But the way you both presented the same reality, each one took another angle of it, because there are things that are similar and there are things that are not, brings me to the question of how come that Israeli politics all of a sudden is aligning itself according to Trump and Obama. Somebody told me years ago Obama didn't pass the Kishke test. He didn't pass the Kishke test. But how come Trump does?
Okay.
Exactly this is the thing. People said that Obama didn't pass the Kishke test, and then with Trump they don't even ask for him to pass the,
exactly.
because with Trump nobody thinks that he has kishkes. That's nobody. It's like it's obvious to everybody that he's not there. But the thing is that it's not only Obama and Trump. It's this thing with Brexit, and you can add a few other things that around the world. The election in the Netherlands, the election in France. And I think that there was this cartoon in Haaretz right after the U.S. election, that it showed the map of Israel and like a circle around Tel Aviv in blue and the rest of Israel in red. Okay, and and I think it's also true in the UK. And it's what we're experiencing right now is that we are back in history to the era of the city-states against the periphery. Okay.
For many years, who was the most popular politician in Israel used to be the American president. When Yitzhak Shamir fought against the Bush administration in 1992, he lost the election. When Benjamin Netanyahu fought Bill Clinton in 1999, he lost the election. Barack Obama was the first president to be extremely unpopular in Israel.
And that was an asset for Netanyahu.
Exactly. And I think it's not that Donald Trump is that popular in Israel, but it's about what I mentioned at the beginning of the panel, that politics is a story happening from the gut. And I'll explain. For years, we Israeli journalists, envied the American boring politics, in which you know exactly what will be the day of the election and when the 3 debates will occur and what the rules will be. And something really awkward happened, that the world actually adopted the Israeli way of doing politics and not the other way around.
Which we call shchuna.
You see,
A neighbor,
exactly, a
like it
neighborhood.
happens in the neighborhood, in the marketplace.
Theresa May skipped the debate in the United Kingdom. She called an early election. In the UK, it's something that it is not done.
So
okay?
the word became farsaba.
Exactly. In Israel, we don't have the phrase, it is not done. It cannot be translated.
Everything can be done.
Exactly. So what happened, in my opinion, is it's about the identity course. Politics, in my opinion, humble opinion, is neither a manifesto examination nor political pledges or performance tests. It's about identity, and the deep identity is the city versus the village, the globalization versus the nationalism. And the fact that Donald Trump is popular is not because he is a poor, unemployed person from Wisconsin, but because the liberals hate him. Same thing happened in Israel in 2015. It's not, in the past, Israel...
It happened in 1996.
In 1996.
And then echoed in 2015.
Yeah, but in 2015, what happened? All the polls showed that Netanyahu is rather unpopular among his voters. In the past, Israel was right versus left, okay? And then it became just Bibi and just not Bibi, okay? If you were a right-winger, you should support Bibi, and in the left, you should oppose Bibi. And then it's just not Bibi and just not Bibi. The fact that they hate him that much, and you should listen to this if you're a Democrat to sit there in the crowd, and I know there are some Democrats here. The more you detest Trump, the more you try to prove the point, the more you try to actually make a joke at him in Saturday Night Live, the more you'll have fun, the less you'll enjoy in the next election.
I want to add something to the kishke and the guts. Okay?
Yeah, and when you do that, Sivan, there's a question from the audience that has to do with Bibi, and the question is, will this prime minister, elected 4 times to be the prime minister of Israel, will he lead Israel to isolation in the world? That's the question from the audience,
Okay.
but you wanted to...
I think it's not that the world, no. The answer is no. Now let's explain. I think it's an addiction. I mean, what we have with Netanyahu, Amit started saying it's a pro-Bibi or anti-Bibi. Everything's Bibi in Israel, or everything's Sarah, okay? His wife, our first lady. Everything goes...
Our first lady is Nechama Rivlin.
Yeah. But when you talk to people, they must have their daily dose of Bibi, of Netanyahu. Everything is connected to him. It happens everywhere. And we must add another factor. Maybe for us it's not so nice, to remember, but the media is very important here. I mean, the media is Trump's enemy. Okay, so people love Trump. The media talks, writes against Netanyahu. It's a very complicated relationship with the media. I think if he had a button, okay, Netanyahu, he can press it, and there will be no more stories about personal stories, about his wife, about his kids, about Kaya, the first dog, okay, the dog in Balfour Street, okay, in Prime Minister's house, about the ice cream they're buying, about the chairs, about all the babysitters they have. I don't know. Do you think he'll press it? And there's no more bad media about his personal life.
Donald Trump can press the button,
he won't press it. He won't
can push the button, and there will be no more New York Times in the world. Will he push it?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
It's good for
He
bad
needs
media
the New York Times as much as Bibi needs us, as much as they hate us, they need us. Something reminds me somehow of married life, but I don't know. but Sivan, I want to take the couple of minutes we have left, because there's a subject that our friends here would like to hear about, and you spoke about Israeli values. Will we have values to give to the world in years from now? And when it comes to religious pluralism, when it comes to the way that Israel embraces, or rather doesn't embrace, certain currents and certain schools of thought in American Jewry, do you think that Israel can and will change in that respect in a way that will accommodate the way Jews in this country live?
That's the most important mission, being relevant, okay? The Torah, our ancient values, ancient text will be relevant. You know, the Jewish movement, I think, in the past was this movement, okay? You must look in order to, okay? This is the movement of what we call in Hebrew pilpul, asking questions, answering it, speaking of all the generations before and all the generations to come, okay? The Jews sat in the yeshiva and exile, okay, in Europe or in Yemen, and he was doing like that. That was the movement. What is the most popular movement today when you look at the Jewish youth? That's right. That's right. That's the movement, right, of watching the feed. So the main mission, I think, is how do we transfer all the things that are there in the book, okay, with the people of the book, we're Am HaSefer, but no one reads books, okay, they're there. So how do we do it? Because, you know, when I watch my feed, Rashi is not there, the Rambam is not there, Einstein is not yet on no Instagram, I can't tag the Baal Shem Tov, Gaon Mivilna, none of these sages, scholars, smart people, they're not there, okay? More stupid people are there. So how do we bring all the brilliant, all the wisdom, all the things that are, it's part of us. What do we do? I think it's more important than doing another panel with talking about the differences between Tzipi Livni and Tzipi Chotoveli. You know, both Tzipis, okay, they're very nice. They have things to discuss, but it's less important than the main mission we have.
We have to end this panel, but I want, after Sivan talked about values and the Baal Shem Tov, I want both of you guys to try and tell me, and if the question is not good enough, reinvent it. But how would you think such a discussion about the future of Israel, the future of the territories, the future of occupation, will look 50 years from now? Will we be discussing the very same things?
I don't think so. I mean, because I don't think that that the occupation will be there in 50 years. Because I think that either we'll get to a situation that the reality, okay, would make us take decisions that we're postponing all the time. So the discussion, I think, in 50 years will be either how do we, I mean, what is Israel's role in the region, okay, in a post-two-state solution era, or the discussion will be what kind of Israel is it in a one-state solution era.
Amit.
The question will be, will Netanyahu bring peace?
Exactly. So first of all, in 50 years from now, we'll still sit here discussing what Netanyahu's prospects are to survive in his 23rd term as a prime minister. Yeah. And we'll all think that he's finished, done.
Yair Netanyahu.
You know, by the way, if you oppose Netanyahu, I have good news for you. The life expectancy in the Netanyahu family is only 102 years. Yeah, 102 years. So
we're getting there. We're getting
Genetics is strong.
Exactly. There's
and
hope.
so is political survival.
I have no idea what the political discourse will be in 50 years from now, but to be honest, I don't think that the Palestinian question depends on the Israeli discourse. I think that we like to play chess against ourselves.
But the Israeli discourse depends on the...
Exactly. Exactly. And Winston Churchill was once asked, what political commentaries, what is it? And he said that being a political commentator actually incorporates two ingredients. First, to actually predict accurately what's going to happen in the political arena. And the second ingredient is to explain afterwards why it didn't happen, but in a brilliant way. So if you want to know what will happen in 50 years' time, come to us in 2067.
We'll have to invite you once again.
You'll have to invite us again.
And for the final note, Amit, I took on the challenge.
This time on an aisle seat.
I took your recommendation of not translating poetry, and I tried to do exactly that. And I want to leave you with the words of one of Israel's greatest poets, Yehuda Amichai. He lived most of his life in Jerusalem and wrote about the city that he loved so dearly. And I did my best to translate a few of his lines. And it has to do with what will happen in many years from now, and is there a chance of sanity and normality in our neighborhood. And he wrote these lines. Once I sat on the stairs near Metzudat David in the old city of Jerusalem. my 2 heavy baskets I put beside me. A group of tourists stood there around their guide, and I served as a reference point for them. You see the man with the baskets? A bit to the right of his head, there's an ark from the Roman age. I said to myself, redemption will come, הגאולה תבוא, only when they will be told, you see that ark from the Roman age? It doesn't matter. But next to it, a bit to the left and down, sits a man who bought fruits for his family. Thank you very much, my friends. Thank you.
Thank you.